Not long ago, I got to interview my friend David Hadden from England for these videos, and honestly, it was less of an interview than it was just a dialogue. We just sat and talked for well over an hour. And it was kind of fun because he's one of the few people that I've gotten to do in these interviews that has actually been leading worship as long as or longer than I have. He's an incredibly gifted, talented musician, and as we talked, he started talking about being really diligent with your music. And so I'm just going to let him talk for a few minutes, and then I'll come back in at the end.
Many years ago, I had a real good friend who was a professional pianist, and he said to me, let me talk to you about practice. He was talking to me personally. And he said, professionals practice until they can't play a piece incorrectly. Amateurs practice until they can play it right, correctly. So you play it once right, that's it, made it. Professionals go the extra level, the step and step and step further. That if the ceiling fell in, if their instrument was taken away, they'll be dragging after it, playing it, whatever it is, and they can't play it incorrectly. And I thought the chasm between the two there is immense. So I've been, in my own life, very devoted to practice, that especially with these fingers that are getting arthritic and can't bend like they used to do, to keep my chops up on the keyboard. This professional keyboard player told me something else as well, that if you practice what you can already play, it's not practice, it's repetition. You should always practice what you can't play, so that when you can play what you haven't been able to play, you've stepped up a level. And then once you can play that level, it's not practice anymore, it's repetition. You've got to step up another level and practice something harder and harder all the time. When I was learning the piano, my music teacher, she'd always turn the page over. I'd got to the end of my piece that I was playing. She'd tick it, and I felt, ooh, I turned fantastic. And she turned the page over, and I felt, oh, man. And I looked at this thing that was onerous to me, and she said, go away and practice it, and come back next week and play it, which I did. And it was always a step higher all the time. That's huge for a musician. Because once you can play an E chord, you can always play an E chord. But there are a number of different ways on a guitar to play an E chord. How many ways do you know as a guitarist how to play an E chord? Well, there's this. Are there other ways? Absolutely. Learn them. Find how you play them. Our youngest son, Michael, is a music teacher in Leicester, where we live. He teaches in about 15 schools and has private students. And he teaches guitar and piano and bass guitar and drums. He practices all the time. Before he got his own house, he'd sit in our house with his guitar, playing all the time. Me and Mum are trying to watch the news, and all we could hear is, Michael, can you just please be quiet? We're trying to listen to the news. And off he'd go. Then the adverts would come on. He'd play the adverts. And we'd look. And he'd look at me and say, I'm just doing what you told me to do. Practice what I can't play. Now he's in a couple of bands, and he's an amazing musician, because he devoted himself to playing what he can't play, and that skill gets higher and higher and higher and higher all the time. It's amazing. At the end of the day, I can only speak for myself, and I have to set my stall out to practice. People have said to me, you don't need to practice. I say, yes, I do, in order to keep my chops up.
I know we've talked about this idea of being diligent with your music in a previous, at least one previous video. in this series. But I want to bring this home again because I think it's so important for worship leaders. And David has kind of a unique perspective. He's a very talented musician, and he's been doing this for decades. And yet he says he still has to practice. He has to work at it. For me, that just speaks volumes of what he sees as really important. Now, here's the deal. You can watch this video, get to the end, and just ignore everything that's there. I mean, it's totally up to you. But as your worship leading coach, I'm going to encourage you to really take to heart what he said and actually do something with it. Work at your musical abilities to improve, to get better at what you're doing so that you'll be able to offer something of real excellence, if you will, both to God and to your congregation.
Brought to you by myworshipleadingcoach.com.
Helping you to be more fully equipped as a worship leader.